Hello, everyone. I'm so glad that we are gathering again for our weekly update on the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial. And I'm delighted to be here today with our patient navigators, Ms. Catherine Small and Allison Bullitt, who will help with the presentation today. And we welcome all of you. As always, we post the recording as well as the slides on our website, and they are available for everyone to view after the meeting. Next slide. And these weekly webinars are really meant to answer your questions. So please type your questions in the chat. And now over the next few minutes, we'll just give you an update and then we'll take your questions. Next slide. As you know, we are working on the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial. We're incredibly excited to have launched a trial that's clearly accelerating the time it takes to develop new treatment for ALS. We are accelerating testing because we are testing multiple treatments in parallel, which is great. Next slide. We started with 3 drugs, Zellucoplan, Verdiperstat, and CNM-Au8, and we are now adding a 4th treatment, Pridopidine. We're very excited because by using a shared infrastructure, we can reduce placebo. For every 4 people who enter the trial, only 1 will receive placebo and 3 will receive active. And then we share the placebo data to be able to have good statistical power and compare each drug to the shared placebo. We're also very pleased to be able to offer an open label extension at the end of the placebo control period. The placebo control period lasts 6 months, and then everyone who completes that is given the option to enter an open label extension, which means that they can receive active drug for several months. Next slide. At this time, we had 30 sites that are actively enrolling in the US. You can find information about the trial sites by going on our website, and that's the link. Next slide. These are the sites that are enrolling as of today, and I'm highlighting the University of Virginia, which is the most recent site to be activated, so welcome. And we will continue to activate the other sites over the next few days and weeks, and then we'll also add new sites in 2021. Next slide. This is our enrollment update for the week. Over 200 people now have signed informed consent, which is remarkable. The trial really has been enrolling much faster than previous ALS trials, which is great. And I think this is a testament to the patient-centered design. And this is really remarkable, especially in the middle of the pandemic. I know everyone is really committed to this trial, patients, families, as well as clinicians and investigators. So thank you for the phenomenal enrollment. We have many people who are currently receiving study drug, active or placebo, and the trial is going really well. Next slide. And now I would like to introduce again Catherine and Allison. They are our patient navigators, and if you could introduce yourselves and tell us where people can reach you and what you do to support people with ALS and people who may be interested in the platform trial. Catherine?
Hi, I'm Catherine Small. I don't really have any fresh material this week, so still the same old news that I'm the patient navigator. And so the number that you see on the screen there and that email address, you can call that number, send an email to that address. And if you have any questions about the trial or about our sites, I'm happy to help connect you with some of the sites or answer any questions that you have.
Great, and Allison?
Thanks, Catherine. Hi, I'm Allison, and if I haven't had a chance to meet you before today, welcome. It's nice to meet you. As many of you know, I lost my husband to ALS in 2016, so I know firsthand how really difficult the ALS journey is and how critical research is to our community. I'm so excited to be part of the HEALEY trial because it is literally changing the paradigm of how research is done for ALS. And while change is fantastic, along with that could come some challenges. So if you come across any issues or you read something online that doesn't quite make sense to you, please reach out to us. We're happy to help. And likewise, if you have a great experience at your site, please let us know. We'd love to share it with that site, and we would love to share with other sites and recreate that great experience for other participants. So thank you, and I look forward to working with you.
Great, thank you. I actually do have a question for you, Catherine and Allison. You just mentioned you are in contact with patients very frequently. Can you tell us, maybe I'll start with you, Allison, what's a question that people are asking you very frequently, or what's a common topic, I guess, that's brought up to you?
Yes, I think one of the things I hear a lot is when a patient contacts the site to express their interest in participating in the trial, what are the next steps in the enrollment process that they can expect to come across?
Right. So essentially, yeah, that's a great question. And so that's something that has also come up on these weekly webinars. And then also, Allison and Catherine, I welcome your input. I'll get started, and then maybe you can tell us what you discuss with the patients when they call you. But essentially, the next step is to be in contact with I would start with your local neurologist and ALS care team, the people that are actually following you clinically and know you the best. And please ask them again whether this trial is the right fit for you, and what they recommend that you do next. And then once you, if your neurologist, if your care team is not directly involved in the trial, they're not working on the trial, I would ask that they connect you to the site, and you can also reach out independently and help send them information such as your medical records or other information that might be important for the site to understand if you, if you qualify for the trial. I think that's the very beginning, but maybe Catherine or Allison, let me know what you generally discuss with the patients when they call you.
Right, I think that's a good point to note, is that if patients do have established care at one of the centers that serves as a research center for the platform trial, that's a great starting point to express interest at that particular site, just because that team knows you and they'll have access to your medical records. And then I'll say too, if you did already express interest to a site near you and it's been quite some time since you've heard back and you're not really sure where you stand, you can always reach out to me, and I can kind of do some digging behind the scenes. But I'll just kind of reiterate that because there's so much interest in the trial, oftentimes it's not that we've lost sight of your interest if you've already expressed interest in participating. It's just sometimes it takes a little time to set up some contact points along that route.
Great. Any other frequently asked questions from either one of you, or any points that you would like to discuss?
Yeah, so I actually was speaking to somebody earlier this week, and the person I was speaking to, they were kind of at the beginning stages of just starting to consider clinical trials as an option in their ALS journey. And so for folks who are in a similar boat, for people who are just kind of starting to weigh their options, what are some of the key factors that they should be considering when they're deciding whether the platform trial would be a good fit?
Yeah, I mean, again, I would start with a discussion about this with your treating physician, because there are many things that go into this decision. And so I think that starting with the people that know you best clinically and follow you, I think it's the first place to start. And again, if you make the joint decision and that the trial is actually a great opportunity, then, again, if that particular physician is directly involved in the trial, obviously they can get you started. If not, they can help refer you to the nearest site, and you can also obviously independently contact the site and again begin the discussion about your participation in the trial. I see there's a number of questions that are coming up, so I'll ask maybe, and they come in both by chat and by Q&A box. So let me start with the chat. So I start to monitor both at the same time, but let's start with chat with that. Catherine, would you mind reading the first question?
Yeah, sure. So the first question I see here in the chat is somebody expresses that it's hard to get into the trials. At least that's what I hear when I call a site closest to me and where my neurologist works. Can we enroll on other sites?
Yes, no, that's a great question. So most sites will enroll people who are not their clinic patients. I do want to say, as a disclaimer, there are a few sites where they only enroll their own clinic patients due to capacity. However, most sites should be able to enroll people that do not receive care at that particular clinic. So yes, absolutely, you can also enroll at other sites. Now, in terms of geography, ideally, it kind of depends on where you are. I don't know where you are, the person who asked the question. There are some cities where there's more than one site. So in the Philadelphia area, for example, in the Boston area, in Florida, there's many sites in different cities, but, it's a relatively manageable drive for some of them. So again, I think if there's a catchment area where there's a couple of sites that could be a good fit, I think it makes sense to work with your neurologist and primary care team to identify maybe the 2 or 3 sites nearby that could be a good fit. Technically speaking, one could also enroll more far away. However, I have to say that given the pandemic, this is a little bit problematic at this time, and there are some concerns about travel. So again, that's why it's hard to just answer this in general. It really depends on your situation and the specific location. That's why I think it's very important to also discuss that with your team to see if it makes sense given your specific circumstance to maybe try even for sites that are more far away. Catherine, do you want to read the second one?
Sure. So this next one is kind of related. So somebody in the chat is saying that I've signed up for the HEALEY Platform Trial. In case there's not availability at MGH, so at our Mass General location, could the platform set me up with other sites, or would I have to contact them by myself?
Right. So yes. So the most important thing is to discuss that with the site that you are in contact with. And I just want to clarify that when somebody sends information, it's not an actual sign up like you would, or registration, kind of a formal registration. It's just the beginning of a conversation. So it's important to continue the conversation with the site. For example, if you called our site, again, it would be good to discuss that with our research access nurse and our staff so that, you can discuss, what the review records is, where they're at with that, and then they could actually let you know if perhaps, it might be more appropriate to try a different site. So again, I want to emphasize that this is not an automated process. It's more a conversation with the sites because things change rapidly, and especially in the pandemic, it keeps changing. So again, I would suggest that you continue to discuss with your site. And actually, there is a follow-up comment here saying that in California, there's a lot of COVID deaths. And I heard if someone with ALS would be a risk, seems that remote should be implemented somehow. I guess you're referring to remote monitoring or remote participation in the trial. So I would say that, yes, we do have some options for remote participation in the trial. I want to clarify that. So we have a few visits that can be done remotely if needed because of the pandemic. However, I also want to emphasize that being seen in person is incredibly important in the context of the trial. Because basically, when you go in person, we can get all the samples, all the biomarkers that are such an important part of this particular trial. So remote works for some of the visits. However, we don't get all the information that you would like that's necessary to really test the safety and efficacy of these drugs. So while it's possible, again, it's something that can only be reserved if needed. Do you want to, I know we have a Q&A box as well, Catherine and Allison. I don't know if you want to read them and then we can quickly take the questions.
So I wanted to know too, if just to kind of make sure everybody's on the same page, if from this point out, just so that we're centralized with their questions, if people are able to type into the Q&A box their questions, then we'll have them all in the same pile too. But I guess we can address maybe that there's a couple comments in the chat box. So we can wrap up the chat box question and move over to Q&A if that works.
Sure.
And so one of them, it looks like it's just a comment that it seems like this person is some sort of healthcare provider, and they're noting that providers can be so overwhelmed, or the time it takes to provide patient care, it's hard to find time to also be educated about the HEALEY trial. So in terms of, I think this is referring back to the, when we suggest that patients reach out to their neurologists or their care physicians to discuss whether the trial is a good fit. Do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is true that right now the healthcare system is stretched. I mean, there's no other way to put it. And so I do have to say that it's actually, to me, it's actually remarkable that we're having such great enrollment, at least at the sites that are able to function at this point. And I know that everyone else, I know that there's also a question about some of the California sites, which ones they are open. Again, please keep in continuous communication with them, because I know a lot of things change, obviously, because of the pandemic very rapidly. So I think that everyone is really working as hard as possible. I can tell you that we work very closely with all the sites, all the 54 selected sites. Again, of the 54, as of today, 30 are active and enrolling, and we're working on bringing all the other ones on board very soon. Everyone is really doing their best. These are extraordinary circumstances, unfortunately, unprecedented situation. So they're really working as hard as possible to come on board quickly. And so you could ask them specifically when they expect to be activated. Maybe we could move to the chat, to the Q&A box, which is where we can also keep in mind when you ask us questions, we also keep them for our quality improvement purposes, and we try to plan the next webinar on those questions as well. And maybe while we take the questions, Molly, if you could move to the next slide, that also provides information on where to find all the webinars. Allison,
Sabrina, may I add one thing before you go from the chat box?
Please go
ahead. 2 chats ago was actually from Scott Daly, who's a past caregiver, not a medical professional. And I think that what he was saying was it's hard for people to have the time to talk about research with their main neurologist. So I just want to add in that we have a lot of information on our website, and Catherine has a ton of resources. So if you do hear that anybody is having trouble finding information about research in general and how to know if it's a good fit, please reach out.
Absolutely, that's exactly one of the reasons why we have a patient navigator. So Catherine is available to talk to you about this trial and also to direct you to other resources. Please do contact us. Thank you. Yeah, so maybe I can take a few quickly, the ones that are in the chat. Somebody asked, is it 4 different treatments at this point or 5? It is, right now we're enrolling for actually 3, but we are about to add number 4 before the end of 2020. So it's really coming any day now. And then we are gonna add more treatments in 2021. And there's also a question about Columbia. Yes, it is open. So please contact them. Thank you. And another question is, what can you include info on how many people are established at each site? And also they're asking if there's gonna be, slowdowns given COVID. Well, so I would say that COVID has really created a lot of barriers for research. And specifically, as you may remember, we were gonna open in the March-April timeframe, and then we opened in July because we couldn't. I mean, it was prohibited to do research at the vast majority of the sites. So again, we started as soon as possible. We have encountered a number of challenges, including the fact that different sites in different geographies have been impacted in a different way. And that's why some sites are open and actually enrolling very well. The sites that are open are enrolling, if anything, faster than before. The sites that are not open, obviously they've been delayed because of COVID-related situations. So the impact is not just on the ALS clinic, the impact on those sites is at the entire hospital level, with people being redeployed. I mean, I can tell you, even at our hospital, they already told us that some of our nurses will be redeployed, right, for, in preparation for the second surge that's the people are expecting to have over the next few weeks. So far, the sites that are up and running are actually enrolling faster than normal. However, some sites have not been able to get up and running yet because of that. And again, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So far, again, we've been able to enroll. Another issue that's actually quite interesting that we did not anticipate is that because of the COVID pandemic, there's been significant challenges at the level of the supply chain for medical equipment. So we have had actually some shortages of plastic tubes and collection tubes of some of the samples. This has actually slowed down a little bit of our processes because our central vendors, and this is true for many vendors, they just don't have some of the material. Again, this has not stopped or really significantly impacted the program, but this is just to say that COVID manifests itself in different ways, in the sense that in addition to the direct impact, there's also indirect impact on supply chains and other processes. Even if the clinic is open, again, some of the processes have been impacted. And then there's a few questions. I'm going to try to, because there's many questions in the chat, I'm just going to try to lump them a little bit in terms of sort of some of the general comments. One question is about when are we going to have results? So when do we expect to announce the results of the first 3 treatments in the HEALEY platform trial? And also the related question is, when do you, is there any efficacy results yet? So no, we don't have any efficacy results yet. We do expect the results of the first 3 treatments to be available in 2021, towards the second half of 2021. When exactly will depend on enrollment. And enrollment also depends on COVID. So it's a little bit hard to make predictions. Again, so far we've been enrolling better than expected. Obviously, should the situation change, we'll have to see. But we, that's why we really want to, continue to update the community on a weekly basis, so that you'll know exactly how things are going, in terms of enrollment. Okay. Do you guys want to read another?
So it looks like there are a few folks who are interested. Probably a lot of people in the ALS community heard some recent news regarding the Enroll trial. So there's a couple questions about that. And I'll start with the first one here, which is, with the release of the Enroll top-line results earlier this week, there's a lot of interest in biomarkers. Can you discuss the significance of the biomarkers that will be analyzed in platform trials, or are we doing anything above and beyond the standard ALS FRS? And
yeah, absolutely. That's such a great question. Yes, we are testing the efficacy of the drugs in terms of the gold standard measurements, like the ALS FRSR and the vital capacity and other measures of muscle strength. But we certainly are very interested in biomarkers. In fact, as you may remember from previous webinars, this particular trial includes a rich panel of biomarkers that we are testing to really tell if these drugs have a biological effect. So we're going to test both drug-specific biomarkers, because obviously in this case we're testing multiple drugs, so each drug will have its own biomarkers, and also ALS, so general ALS biomarkers that would be applicable to all the drugs. And this is actually why I was saying before that it's important for people to come in person, because we can only get the biomarkers if people come in person. And that's because of the storage and sampling of the samples. These are, very specific biomarkers. These are not just sort of, routine tests that can be done sort of at the regular doctor's office. And that's why we need people to come in person, so that the samples can be processed and packaged and stored, so that we can analyze these new rare biomarkers that we really are interested in. That's again, that's why we're sort of reserving remote monitoring and telemedicine for situations where it's important for safety. Obviously, we put safety first. If somebody is not safe to come in, absolutely, because of COVID. However, the preferred and default option is to come in person, also to collect these biomarkers that really are teaching us so much more about the drugs that we are testing. So I would say that that's definitely an important component of the platform trial. And specifically, I would say that the goals of the platform trial are really twofold. Number one is to accelerate the testing of new drugs. Absolutely, we want to test the specific drugs and know if they work. but we also want to contribute to the scientific community. And because we need to learn more about ALS in general, and we need to improve our knowledge and our ability to fight ALS. And the biomarkers do that. So that's one way in which we are contributing to the ALS community and really to generating even new treatments, even beyond the ones that we are testing here, because we are collecting these biomarkers and we are sharing samples. So the extra samples that are generated from the platform trial will be shared with researchers so that they can continue to develop new treatments in addition to the ones that we are testing.
So kind of jumping off the science behind the trial design, one of the questions in the box here is, what is the purpose of having a placebo?
Yeah, so a placebo is needed to be able to precisely tell the safety and the efficacy of the drugs. Now, we want to minimize placebo as much as possible. That's why we came up with this shared infrastructure where we can minimize placebo. And we certainly want to be mindful of the generous efforts of everyone who is involved in the science and in the trial. And that's why we have an open label extension, so that people who participate in the trial and contribute to the testing of the drug can actually have access to the drug. That would happen 6 months later. I wish I could say that we can remove the placebo completely, but unfortunately, for a number of reasons, that's not possible at this stage. We hope to get there. In fact, our randomization ratio is 3-to-1 right now. It's possible that it might get even better, like 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 in the future, but we have to start somewhere. We have to accumulate a placebo bank, so to speak, for the first 6 months again only, and then people can go on active. But we need that bank to be able to draw meaningful conclusions about the drugs that we are testing. And as I see that the questions are coming up in terms of which drugs are tested in the trial, we have all the description of the first drugs that are in the trial is actually on our website. So there's a few posted on our website if you want to have more information about the science behind the drugs. That's on our website, and we're gonna plan dedicated webinars about each of the drugs that we are testing. And somebody asked if Neuron was part of the trial. No, Neuron was not part of the trial. Also, someone is asking me if I'm specifically involved in stem cell therapy. I'm actually not directly involved in the Neuron trial. Some of my colleagues are directly involved, but I'm not. Any other questions?
So one question here is kind of two parts, and they're asking, do you have a list of potential future trial locations? So for example, asking if maybe we would establish research centers in Utah. And then another question within that is, do we have a likely time frame for learning about the potential efficacy of the drugs currently being tested?
Yes, so for the ones that are tested right now, again, we're looking at 2021, so the second half, I would say, of 2021. That will depend on the speed of enrollment, and again, that will be affected by COVID. So it's hard to give you an exact month, again, because we are in such uncertain times. But certainly, if we continue at this rate, we're going to be able to communicate those results next year, which is amazing if you think about it, because so far we were testing one drug at a time. And if you just look at the history of ALS research, the trial results, there's only maybe a couple of results every year. And here we're going to be having many results in the same year, so which is fantastic. We are actually issuing a call for new trial locations. And so, again, it could be anywhere in the US, and it will depend on which locations apply. So we can, it's up to the sites to apply to participate.
There's a good question from Judy Carey. I think that might be a good closing.
The most up-to-date list of activity centers, I suggest that you go on the NGH website. And actually, Molly, could you go back to the page where we have the list of centers? So these are the sites that are enrolling right now. But if you can go back one more question. One more slide, I'm sorry. That's the link where you can find all the trial sites. Great. So please contact the sites, and maybe we'll follow up by email with the other questions that are being typed now. I know we are right at time, but I would suggest maybe for the new questions that are coming in, we can send emails and then be in touch and start with those also next week. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Next week is Thanksgiving, so we're not going to be meeting next week. Sorry. Please check our website for a list of upcoming webinars, and we can be in touch by email with everyone else who might have a question before then and wants to contact us. So if you can go back to the slide with the email, that's the easiest way to communicate with us. Please send us your questions if we didn't get a chance to answer them today. And then again, no webinar next week, but please check our website with the schedule, and we will continue to update folks over the next few days. Thank you so much. Thank you.